BBC World News, the biggest African and international news stories. Focus on Africa.
Hello, I'm Sophie Ikenye. Welcome to Focus on Africa. Our top stories. The body of Archbishop Desmond Tutu is lying in state at his former parish in Cape Town. Mourners will pay their respects for 2 days ahead of a state funeral on Saturday. When all else fails, try the courts. We speak to the young activists suing 33 countries to force them to stick to the climate pledges they agreed on at COP26. The new lengths Kenyan avocado farmers are having to go to protect their green gold as rising global demand leads to increasing crop theft. Also in the program, Ugandan film in focus. Find out how one man went from teaching himself camera tricks via YouTube to having his feature debut be the first Ugandan film ever to be shown on Netflix. And in sport, former Arsenal and England striker Ian Wright says the African Cup of Nations is being disrespected. Thanks for joining us on Focus on Africa from BBC World News. We start in South Africa, where memorial services continue to mark the passing of Archbishop Desmond Tutu as his body lies in state at his former parish in Cape Town. Mourners will be able to pay their respects for 2 days ahead of a state funeral on Saturday. Well, Nomsa Masego joins us from the City Hall in Cape Town. Nomsa, what's happening today?
Well, the doors to the St. George's Cathedral have just closed. It's quite windy here in Cape Town, but there were mourners that had gathered here to view the Archbishop's body. The body has now been removed and taken back to the morgue. It will be returned here tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. to allow more people to come and pay their last respects. But just a few hours ago, there was a night of remembrance that was held for the closest friends of Desmond Tutu, and they were also paying their last respects and speaking fondly about their friend who now died at 90 years old. And one of those people is Yasmin Suka, who is a human rights lawyer and who worked very closely with Desmond Tutu at the Truth and Reconciliation Commission.
I'd known for a long time that the Archbishop was not doing well. And in fact, 2 weeks ago, had been told that it was quite possible that the end was near. But even though I knew that, when I actually heard on the Sunday that he had passed away, I was devastated and so sad, because for me it's the passing or the end of an era, a colossal figure that perhaps we took for granted, that he was larger than life, and so deeply, deeply sad.
Now, Nomsa, take us through what will happen tomorrow and Saturday.
Well, the body of Archbishop Desmond Tutu will be brought back here to the St. George's Cathedral to lie in state for a second day in order to allow members of the public to pay their last respects. And then on Saturday, there will be a state funeral that will take place here at the same chapel. We expect that President Cyril Ramaphosa will attend that funeral. We do know that he will be cremated and his remains will be interred here next to the altar at the St. George's Cathedral.
All right, Nomsa Masego for us there, keeping an eye on developments. Thank you. Now to Kenya, where a ban on the export of a number of popular avocado varieties has been in effect for over a month. The aim is to curb the harvesting of immature crops by hungry farmers and dealers. As demand for the fruit grows, Kenyan farmers are dealing with an increase in organized thieves targeting large farms. Now, farmers have now turned to artificial intelligence, vigilante groups and armed guards to protect what's known as the green gold.
As night falls, heavily armed men begin their watch. These vigilantes are hired by local avocado farmers. Murang'a County in central Kenya is the biggest supplier of harsh avocado, much loved locally and abroad. Global demand for the fruit in American and European markets has seen the prices soar, and with that, increasing theft of avocados, which go for millions of dollars every year. In the next county in Meru, the situation is far worse. The business has been infiltrated by middlemen and organized crime who can clear a farmer of their crop overnight. Well, this is a very lucrative business. Just one tree can take one child through an entire year of schooling, which is not cheap here in Kenya, and that's why it's attracting so many middlemen and robbers. These are fruits harvested from the next farm and hidden here where the fence is cut. At night, they will be collected by the thieves and bagged for export.
We have fruits when the prices are really at the peak in the world market. Now, with that kind of demand and so many people wanting the fruits, so someone getting his hands on fruits from your farm, he has already a very good market. So we are fearful that we are tending towards that direction.
Kenya is the fifth largest exporter of avocados globally. Last year, it beat South Africa as the top exporter in Africa. But the theft causes farmers to try and harvest early, compromising the strict standards imposed by major importers like the US, China and Europe.
We're talking about different things like putting cameras in the farms, keeping dogs, engaging watchmen during the peak period. So we have all these number of ideas coming on the table.
Farmers feel the government isn't doing enough to protect their farms. It's difficult to prosecute offenders because fruits can't be tracked from farms to grocery and supermarket shelves. Farmers say they'll adopt technology to keep thieves at bay, but for now they're turning to armed local vigilante groups.
Since we caught them, theft has decreased because the thieves now know there are people who are protecting the avocados. The government needs to come in as well. Even though we have pests, we can trap them, but thieves, it's hard work. That night we caught those thieves. If I blew the whistle and the villagers came, they surely would have been a mob justice because people are angry.
Kenya's avocado trade is still in its infancy. Last year, the fruit earned Kenyans $132 million, and Kenya's Trade Ministry says this was just 10% of all the harvested crop. But as global demand grows, farmers expect to see more of this theft, which endanger livelihoods of farmers who invested heavily in this thriving green gold business. Emmanuel Gunza, BBC News.
Let's now take a quick look at other stories making headlines across Africa. Security forces in Sudan have shot dead 3 protesters in Omdurman. That's according to the Central Doctors Committee. Earlier today, police fired tear gas to disperse the demonstrators as they approached the presidential palace in Khartoum. Thousands of demonstrators have defied a lockdown to protest against October's coup. The opposition says nearly 50 people have been killed and hundreds injured in a series of protests held over the last 2 months. The Islamist group Al-Shabaab attacked a town about 30 kilometers north of the capital, Mogadishu. Police say at least 7 people were killed in the fighting between Al-Shabaab and government forces in Balad. Experts say the jihadists are taking advantage of a deepening political crisis as troops supporting opposing politicians are occupying different parts of Mogadishu. It comes after President Mohamed Abdullahi Farmajo tried to suspend the Prime Minister for the second time this week. Now let's meet London-based fashion designer Fode Doumbouya, originally from Sierra Leone. He's made it his mission to change the conversation about immigrants through the power of snappy dressing. He's also made history by becoming the first Sierra Leonean to design the country's Olympic kit for Tokyo 2020. Fode owns the fashion brand La Brume. He told us how he used this as an opportunity to unite the country's historically segregated tribes through their love of sport.
We use a tagline designed by an immigrant to celebrate the added value that immigrants add to society. There's a lot of negative connotation about being an immigrant. So for us, that breaks that barrier of communication. Wherever people see that, it starts a conversation. So we wanted that conversation to grow and open people's minds as to the way they view immigrants. I'm an immigrant. I was born in Sierra Leone and then grew up in between Cyprus and London. So for me, Sierra Leone gave me the core base of my life. Sierra Leone is very integral into some of the stories that we tell and also into the brand aesthetic. It's sort of like the brand DNA. I get to design the Sierra Leone Olympic kit, which came about in some sort of like a peculiar way. So I went to Sierra Leone to do this marathon, the street track marathon, and I saw a lot of kids, like some of them running the race, they don't have any shoes. I think that kind of bugged me a lot, because I was like, how can I help? So after the race, I went and saw some of these kids and hanging out, and the kids have actually ran the race. And I'm like, yo, I said, you guys are really, really good. What happened to the shoes? So they're like, oh, we don't have one. I'm like, oh no. I need to do something to help. From then on, seeing them running barefoot, I think that kind of motivates me to kind of try to give back. And I helped them to build something called Labrum Athletic. A couple of them qualified to go to the Olympic. Hence why the minister ended up reaching out to me and saying, hey, thank you for actually looking after these boys for us. But now we qualify for the Olympic. Can you help us? The first thing that came into my mind as to how I designed the Olympic kit is like, there's this disconnect with the tribes. And the only thing that connects them is through sports. And so I thought, how can we bring the tribes together and replicate something that they all feel like they're part of? And so why we came up with like two designs. There's one, the zigzag, and the second one, which is the interlock, that showcase how sports unify the tribes together. We create stories that people like Idris Elba kind of connect with, and people like Samuel L. Jackson, I could be Jordan, Munir Chihuahua. And these are people that actually wear the brand. People are absorbing that information and relating to it, and in turns making them become a fan of the brand. And we kind of like archive this information. Maybe one day in 50 years, a kid in London or a kid in Sierra Leone or somewhere in Africa will look up and try to find inspiration to start something that we did 50 years ago. So I think that's what's important to us. It's not just about the clothes. It's not just about the celebrities that are wearing it. It's more about the legacy that we can leave for other kids to be able to pick something up.
Well, still to come, Mimi will be here with all the sports news as Nigeria's Victor Osimhen tests positive for COVID-19 days before the start of the Africa Cup of Nations. Welcome back. You're watching Focus on Africa from BBC World News. Now, a group of children in Portugal are using human rights legislation to sue 33 countries to force them to act on the pledges they made at the COP26 climate summit. The deal that leaders struck last month includes further reducing carbon emissions and using less coal, but it is not legally binding, leaving some in the climate change movement disappointed. And so many campaigners, especially younger activists, are putting their faith in international courts to ensure pledges are kept. Our Europe correspondent Nick Bick has been hearing from them.
I'm Sophia, I'm 16 years old. I'm Andre, I'm 13 years old, and we are suing 33 countries. It's pretty scary.
It's not a joke.
One family's effort for the global good. Brother and sister Andre and Sophia felt compelled to do something after devastating fires hit northern Portugal 4 years ago.
We actually saw people like suffering and dying on TV, and not that far away from us.
In all, 66 people perished. Scientists say climate change will bring more of these violent episodes. The young Portuguese activists hope judges will rule that their right to life is being threatened by the 33 countries they're suing.
Even if we don't win, I think we set an example to other people that they can follow. So it's like a snowball effect that gets bigger and bigger.
Dutch climate campaigner Yveske van der Waal agrees a new direction's needed. She's hiked through the Netherlands during the pandemic, trying to drum up support, and argues the best path is now a legal one.
Because we feel now a lot of doors are shutting, we're taking it to the court. Because first, in the climate strikes, we yelled, what do we want? Climate justice, when do we want it now? That's the main thing we say. And now we're actually courageous enough to take it to the courts and hope that this door will stay open and actually accelerate the climate action that we need.
Just this summer, more than 200 people were killed in devastating floods in Europe, most in Germany. Nearly 6 months on, communities are struggling to rebuild, including here in Western Belgium.
As more lives are lost and more livelihoods ruined by extreme weather episodes, it feels like the momentum is shifting towards solutions that force politicians to act rather than waiting for them to deliver their promises. And there's a renewed effort to place their actions or inaction on the environment among the most serious crimes imaginable.
International lawyer Philippe Sands argues that a crime of ecocide, causing grave damage to the environment, should be introduced.
The person within government who takes that decision, it could be a prime minister, it could be a foreign secretary, it could be a president, could be individually responsible for the crime of ecocide. It works as a disincentive. The idea that you might spend time in prison, the idea that you might have to go through an individual criminal trial, that tends to concentrate the mind.
There's likely to be powerful political opposition to that plan, but young campaigners feel something must change to ensure environmental promises are finally honoured.
We are basically giving them a second chance to do the things that they said they will do, to keep their promises. I want them to think that this is like a second chance, not a threat, not an attack, an opportunity.
Nick Beek, BBC News.
Now, imagine scrolling through Netflix looking for something to watch, only to see that a movie you'd directed yourself was about to be made available to the whole world, and you had no idea. That's what happened to our next guest, Lukman Ali, whose feature debut, The Girl in a Yellow Jumper, was meant to be released in cinemas last year, but was shelved due to the pandemic. The 31-year-old's revenge thriller became available on Netflix last Sunday, and it happens to be the first Ugandan film ever to premiere on the streaming giant. I spoke to Lukman and began by asking him how he found out his film was going to be on Netflix.
I was watching a TV show called You. Very interesting TV show. So when I was done, I was browsing through, like where you exit from is quite next to where you see what's coming up, like in a couple of weeks. So I was just going down there, and then I saw a poster that looks like my poster. So then I was like, oh my God, someone is going to think that I copied this. And then I looked closer, and it was my film. I was like, oh my God, I thought they would give me some sort of like a heads up. But that was a very good surprise, to be honest. I was surprised, and I was extremely happy.
Tell me a little bit about the film.
The film was written, I think I started writing this back in maybe 2018. It was my very first time writing a film, very first time doing a feature film. So my background is drawing, so I have dyslexia, so it was extremely difficult for me. And when I was done with it, I was thinking that this is probably going to be trash. So the film is about a nurse that treats an abortion, a young teenager that just had an abortion and she's about to die. But right before she dies, she tells him her story, and then the nurse decides to avenge the little girl. And the nurse is the girl in the yellow jumper, and that's the whole film.
And then, what would you say was unique about your film making process? Everything.
I think because of the nature of the world that I live in, I have to improvise a lot. There's so much things that I had to make up. And kind of figure out ways of doing them. So many challenges that it's there's a time we actually decided to make a list of challenges we have, and there were too many. I'll give you an example. Like I wrote the film and I was directing the film, and halfway the film, my director of photography broke his back. He was trying to lift something heavy, and he broke his back. And then the same night, the person who was doing my sound, who I didn't know that he had asthma, he also started passing out because we didn't have a smoke machine and we were burning.
What are you serious?
Yeah. So we ended up having to have different people taking up different roles. So the moment my director of photography broke his back, he couldn't carry anything heavy. So then he became an extra in the film. And then I also doubled as the DOP. And then there was so much going on that sometimes something would happen and we'd just laugh.
So what would you tell anyone watching, what would you advise them if they are starting off?
Depending on where they are, if they're in a if they're in a country that is not in the third world, I think their work is kind of cut out for them. But if they're in the third world, then you just have to learn how to do everything and just push on and don't wait for anyone to give you a chance.
Filmmaker Lukman Ali there. You're watching BBC Focus on Africa. Time now for some sport. And Mimi, Ian Wright has his say finally on AFCON.
Very big points indeed that he's making. Former England and Arsenal striker Ian Wright says the Africa Cup of Nations is being disrespected by some negative media coverage. In an Instagram post, Wright said, "Is there ever a tournament more disrespected than the Africa Cup of Nations?" On the media coverage around AFCON, he claimed there is no greater honor than representing your country. The 24-team competition begins on January 9th and will feature a host of Premier League and European stars. Crystal Palace manager Patrick Vieira is among those to also call for the tournament to be given more respect. Lots of reaction on social media to that story. Former Porto and Sporting boss Jose Peseiro was named as the new coach of Nigeria on Wednesday, but the Portuguese will only take charge after the Africa Cup of Nations tournament. The 61-year-old, who resigned as Venezuela coach in August due to unpaid wages, replaces Gernot Rohr, who was sacked 2 weeks ago. His appointment has been met with mixed reactions from football fans, as Oluwashina Okeleji in Lagos reports. Oh, okay. We don't have that report for now. More Africa Cup of Nations squads are being announced as the tournament gears up to kick off next week. On Wednesday, Egypt named Aston Villa's Trezeguet in their final 25-man list, despite not playing since April, with Mohamed Salah expected to captain the team. And today, Guinea-Bissau has named a 24-man squad for the Africa Cup of Nations, with half of players based in Portugal. Tunisia have also released theirs. Manchester United teenager Hannibal Mejbri in his 28-man squad. You can get more details on the BBC Sports Africa page. And as well, Super Eagles striker Victor Osimhen has cancelled the planned trip to Italy to assess his cheekbone injury after contracting coronavirus for a second time. The 23-year-old returned a positive test in Nigeria ahead of his trip to Naples, but is asymptomatic according to a statement by the Serie A outfit. Osimhen, whose latest positive test comes just 12 days before Nigeria's opening game at the Africa Cup of Nations, will isolate for at least 1 week in line with public health protocols. Osimhen was included on Christmas Day in his country's 28-man squad list. And Sophie, that's all the sport for now.
Thank you, Mimi. Thank you, Mimi. Just before we go, you don't forget you can get in touch with me and some of the team on social media at Ikenye. And of course, details on our top story there, the body of the Archbishop Desmond Tutu lying in state at his former parish in Cape Town. And mourners there, of course, paying their respects for 2 days ahead of the state funeral on Saturday. But that's a Focus on Africa for now. Thank you so much for your company. Bye.